Hi everyone, this is Anne Cullen. Welcome to another Top Tip Tuesday live. I am talking today about breastfeeding. So it will be great to see some of you today with your questions, but in the meantime, I'm going to share with you my top tips for breastfeeding in the early weeks. So today my focus is going to be on the first 6 weeks. Not that that's any magic time. So, 6 weeks, it could be the first 8 weeks, it could be the first 3 months. So this is just a window of time, but a lot happens in the first 6 weeks that can be really confusing. And we have preconceived ideas and lots of information we've been gathering while we're pregnant. And some of it may be accurate and some of it might not be. So let's clear up some of the confusion, if you will. So of course, on a video like this, I'm only speaking in general terms. And as always, anytime that you're concerned with something going on with your baby, reach out for help. If you really are still quite confused with all the information you're taking in and you really want to get some one-to-one advice or information or opinions, obviously look into getting some help either from me or your midwife, a doctor, your friends, La Leche League. There's all kinds of choices. But let's get some general ideas, because what happens is I often see people that aren't having any breastfeeding problems who think they are. And I often see people that should have gotten help far, far earlier than they did. So really, we can't expect, as a first-time parent, to really know what we're doing, right? And this can be also true when you have subsequent children, because even though you figured it out with one child, every baby's unique and your circumstances have changed. If you've got a toddler around, then you're juggling having two kids, and that is different. So really, those first 6 weeks in particular are very, they can be really confusing because you're just getting to know this new situation, this new baby. If you're literally a first-time mom, you're starting to understand the commitment that you've just made to bringing a new life into the world. And it can be extremely overwhelming. It can be very exhausting. And of course, your sleep is disrupted on top of it. Your body has just been through a pregnancy. And whether it was easy or hard for you, it has taken a toll on your body. So thanks for popping on, people. Anytime you pop on one of my live videos, feel free to put in comments or questions. Otherwise, I will just carry on with my top tip for today, which is about early breastfeeding in the first 6 weeks and basically when to know when there's a problem. And again, I won't be able to tell you every time you need help. So if in doubt, always reach out to somebody. My biggest tip for you is to get help really fast, really early. So the first and foremost problem that people experience is pain. And a lot of people say, I wish people would have said how much breastfeeding hurts when you first start. And this is a little bit concerning. So there's two sides of this. Yes, it can definitely be uncomfortable. Your nipples have not experienced breastfeeding before. So you've got a lot of hormones and stuff going on. So it can be a little uncomfortable. It can be, when you first latch on, a little bit of tension in your body. But what should happen, if the breastfeeding positioning is good and everything's okay with your baby, then that discomfort should go away within a few seconds, the first minute of that feed, and you should get quite comfortable and be able to relax. So that is one indication. So don't expect breastfeeding to be completely pain-free in those first few feeds, but it's not going to be a strong pain. It's going to be more of a discomfort and my body getting used to this. Pain is definitely an indication. And if you're unsure if your level of pain is in the normal range in those first couple of weeks, another thing to look at would be the shape of your nipple. And if your nipple is coming out squashed, like mine sure were with my first baby, that's an indication that latching and breastfeeding is a problem. Or if your nipple goes white and then changes back to its normal color, that's an indication that there's a constriction. So again, if in doubt, get help with some positioning. So pain is a really good indication. Now, weight loss can be really, really confusing in that first part of birth. So I just want to put out here that like here we start to say at 10% weight loss is getting to be too much and supplements are indicated. And I just want to suggest, of course, I've got no ability to interfere with whatever is happening for you and your baby in a hospital situation. But just remembering that if you've had a C-section or if you've been induced, you are probably, if you have edema, and you've got swelling and stuff going on, your baby is very likely taken in a little bit of extra water and with an IV or something. So those are the babies that could very possibly lose a little bit extra, even if feeding's going okay. So that's just a little bit of a caution if you've been plugged into an IV or something. But if weight gain is not back to the birth weight by a couple of weeks, then you definitely have a problem that's a breastfeeding problem that needs to be looked at. Ideally, the weight gain is back to birth weight even before that. So that would be kind of the extreme by 2 weeks of age. But definitely we'd like it going up about 20 grams a day, about an ounce, a little bit less than an ounce actually a day for those newborn babies. So, but even without weight, because of course babies won't weigh much. We get really technical about these things now. So weight is an indication, but even better is the pooing. So in the first 6 weeks, I want to see lots of poos and nappies, and I'm not as worried about the urine output. That can be harder to tell, especially if you're a person using disposable diapers or disposable nappies. So really it's the poos, and literally after just about every feed, if there's a poo, that would be great. So really that is some of the best indications. So if you're mostly pain-free in your feeding, and if your baby is getting those poos out a lot, then those are really, really good indications that feeding is going okay. So now an indication that a lot of people use even in the first 6 weeks is my baby never wants to be put down. My baby, I think, has to feed all the time. Again, if your baby is on you and feeding constantly and you're in pain, or the baby is on you all the time, presumably feeding, but they fall asleep really quickly and those poos are not coming out, but they're just falling asleep and not really getting a good feed, that's an indication of a problem. But I'm sure many of you have heard about the 4th trimester, and this goes for the first 3 to 4 months of baby's life, and they're all a little bit different. But certainly for the first 6 weeks, really your baby wants to be held all the time, needs to be held all the time. And really the ideal place for that is on the breast, skin to skin, preferably with mum. So obviously in different situations, you have to decide what you can actually do for your baby. I'm just suggesting that in the first 6 weeks, that is the ideal place for your baby. So how can you manage that without going crazy and without thinking there's a problem? And certainly doing a little bit of baby wearing, finding some sort of wrap works really, really well, some sort of carrier so that baby can be with you most of the time really will help. And that's not necessarily suggesting that you're going to be able to walk around the house doing housework, carrying your newborn baby and breastfeeding them at the same time. That's a bit too much. But what I would suggest is that if you get really, really used to wearing some sort of wrap or carrier, that is going to be make things much more manageable for you, so you're not feeling as stuck. And when you do manage to get baby to sleep in that, then you can get up and kind of carry on with things a little more as you normally would. So I often hear concerns that, my baby, I feed them and then I hold them for a minute, like I'm meant to, and then I put them down and then they wake up and then they just want to feed again. So I'm not sure if they're getting enough milk. Two things can be happening there. One can be that, no, they didn't get enough milk and they want more. Breast milk is so incredibly easily digested, which is why it's so great for babies, but it also means that they might want to feed a lot. But the other is remembering that your baby doesn't have the ability to think and reason at all. They're completely in their instinctual brain, meaning you put them down, they see it kind of as a death threat. I might die. I need to get back to my home, which is on my mother's chest. So it's very, very normal for in those first 6 to 16 weeks, every time you put your baby down, they will wake up and want to be on you, right? So that is not an indication that breastfeeding is not going well. If that behavior is accompanied with no poos coming out, no weight being gained, or lots of pain on you when you're feeding, then it's a problem. So, so managing yourself and what's going on around you, being looked after, letting the housework go, having people come to your house and doing the housework for you, getting your washing all folded for you while you hold your baby and breastfeed your baby is probably what's going to have to happen in the first 6 weeks. People might get to have a quick cuddle, but ideally baby is with you and on you, and it's for other people around you to be doing all that peripheral stuff and looking after the mother and feeding her, right? So that you can do the job of looking after your baby, because I guarantee that is what your baby expects. Your baby pretty much expects to be held and breastfed constantly by its mother. So it's managing that requirement of your baby. And it's really, really hard to do if we have these unrealistic expectations of life's pretty much going to be okay because, for the first week, my baby just slept and now I put it down and it just screams. So here's another thing that often happens that people think there's a problem is that people see that as pain. And I'm not saying that it definitely isn't pain when you lay your baby down and it cries straight away. It could be. But more likely, it's that instinctual brain, that survival brain kicking in and saying, just please pick me up. I really liked being with you. I don't want to be laying here on my back on this surface without you. So it's most likely not a reflux response. It's most likely not wind or gas or some kind of pain. Okay. We are often told this, so that can be really confusing to hear me say that. But I guarantee your baby just mostly wants to be picked up. So again, I'm just speaking very generally here. You could have a different experience. So let's talk quickly about the idea of wind and reflux and pain with these newborn babies. And I'm again talking about the first 6 weeks and when we're looking at pain and digestion and stuff like that. Okay. So in the first 6 weeks, your baby, especially I'm talking if they're 100% breastfed at the breast, that can be a slightly different situation to certainly a baby that's getting some formula, and certainly to babies that are being bottle fed or mostly bottle fed. So I mostly want to stick to the breastfeeding part. So I'm just going to say a teeny bit about formula. Milks are not made from human milk, and they are not the same. They are harder to digest. I do believe that you're more likely to get a baby who's having trouble digesting and having some wind and gas pains and maybe problems pooing and stuff if your baby's receiving formula. That cow protein is very, very large. It's very different to human milk protein. So even if you're just doing some formula, like a couple of top-ups here and there, that will affect your baby. So again, if you're having to do formula because of a breastfeeding problem, just get help with your breastfeeding problem so you can wean off that formula. Another thing is bottle feeding is often, whether it's breast milk or formula, often done too quickly. So I encourage you to sit your baby more upright and really slow down the feeds and keep the amounts very, very small. very small, 50 mils. Sorry, offhand, I don't know that. In the US, a couple of ounces, so we're talking nice, small, slow feeds if you're bottle feeding. So now we'll get back to just the breastfed, at the breastfed baby. Generally feeding in a semi-reclined position, and I've talked about this in another video, so you could look up my my YouTube channel and see. Really, ideally, when you're feeding in the first 6 weeks, almost every feed, if you can manage, should be in such a reclined position that if you were to let go of your baby, they won't roll down your tummy. So they're literally tummy to tummy, but you are so reclined that you're not sitting up like this. So if you were to let go of your baby and you're sitting up, baby's going to roll off. If you're more reclined, not laying down, but if you're more reclined and you would let go of your baby, although you're not going to do that, if you were to let go of your baby, it's not going to go anywhere. So you're tummy to tummy with your baby. And believe it or not, that gentle pressure works wonders for getting out the burps when the burps need to come out. The other thing you can do, of course, is just give your baby those gentle snuggles. So you fed, maybe they're on the breast, they can just lay across you, or just bring them up to your shoulder. It's a very, very natural thing for us to just want to bring our baby up to the shoulder and cuddle it. And what I'm suggesting is we don't go into actual winding or burping routines and patting. But if it feels good to you, which it often does, a little bit of light rubbing on baby's back is brilliant. That also can bring up wind. But I'm not suggesting you're doing the rubbing to bring up those burps. I'm just suggesting that it feels nice. So babies don't have to burp all the time, and they're very capable of getting the burps out, especially, like I say, if you're a breastfeeding mom feeding at the breast. Okay, so I know that's really confusing, and a lot of people are not telling you that same information. So your baby is unique though, okay? So you might find that your baby is really one that wants to be up and held more. But I am suggesting that for the most part, that is not a pain response. If your baby needs to be held a lot, it is more likely just because they're a sensitive wee thing that really understands it's safe to be on mum and not as safe to be put down. So just experiment. So in the first 6 weeks, and this is how I'll finish up, in the first 6 weeks, and really for the rest of your child's life, to be honest, but in the first 6 weeks, I want you to think of 2 words: flexible, experiment. Flexible and experiment. Those are the only 2 things you need to be doing in the first 6 weeks. So we don't want a rigid way of looking at our baby, which, like I say, a lot of people, for example, will put baby down, baby cries. They think pain. Okay, now we have to do something about this. It's probably reflux. It's probably gas pain. It's probably they haven't been fed enough. But see, if I'm constantly thinking about all the things it could be, rather than just that one thing, then that's maintaining my flexibility. Okay, so when you're dealing with an issue with your baby and trying to figure out all of the things you have to figure out, maintain your flexibility. And the other word was experiment, because really, my goodness, have you ever met someone and the day you met them, you knew everything about them? Never. It never, ever happens. So for some reason, we have this expectation that within 2 or 3 days, we've kind of got the baby figured out and there's something wrong with us because they're crying now and we can't figure out what it is, or we don't know when to switch sides when we're feeding. We can't tell when they want to sleep or when they want to be awake. You shouldn't have figured that out. You shouldn't have figured that out. And trust me, as your children grow, you will start to get to know them, just like you know your spouse and your best friend and your mother. And, you know, it's a relationship that you're building. So just experiment and see what your baby likes. See if they need to be picked up more and that makes them happier. See if they need to lay on their own more and that makes them happier. See if they need to go outside. See if they enjoy swaying. See if they enjoy singing. Okay, so it's just experiment, experiment, experiment. experiment, and in that vein, remaining really flexible in your thinking, not always coming at every situation with, I know they're tired, I know they're hungry, because I will tell you, you'll get to that point where you'll be able to predict those things with much more ease and clarity. But in the first 6 weeks, there's just no way that you can. You're still learning. It's still such early days. So that is the most important time to remain flexible in your thinking about your baby. Hey, thank you for popping on. Anyone that has a question, pop it in. I am about to sign out. Those are my top tip Tuesday tips for breastfeeding in the first 6 weeks. Remember, I'm here. You can log on to a 10-minute call with me if you're a bit confused, if you need help or not, and if I'm the right person for you or not. So there's a no obligation call. Let's just talk for 10 minutes. We'll have a quick chat. You can tell me what's going on, what's confusing you, what problems you think you might be having, and we can talk about if we're a good fit, or if you even need the help of a professional right now or not. So hope to see you and know what's going on for you as mum. So, and again, please leave questions during the week. I will do these lives every Tuesday, but leave your questions whenever you'd like. And yeah, I look forward to getting some more comments from you. Okay, thank you so much for joining. I will see you next Tuesday.